Load up on guns, bring your friends, fun to lose and to pretend she's overborn, but self-assured, no, no, a dirty word. Hello, 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 wasn't what I do best, and for this gift I feel blessed. A little through has always been, always will till the end. Yeah, just what it is, so yeah, yes, it makes me smile. I found it hard, was hard to find, well, whatever, never mind.
single room with 3 other individuals. One of them was a male, and the other 2? Well, the other 2 were females. God only knows what they were up to in there. And furthermore, Susan, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to learn that all 4 of them habitually smoke marijuana cigarettes. Smoke marijuana cigarettes. Smoke marijuana cigarettes.
And welcome to Mountain High Time. I finally figured out everything about this stuff. I've been trying to do shows, but it never lets me share the sound, and it takes a long time to cut, edit, upload videos so I could play it. I finally figured out how to work it. So here we go. We're going to see, what the rumors were all about. Let's see here. Let's go full screen with this right here. Hegseth orders rare, urgent meeting of hundreds of generals and admirals. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen a bunch of videos on this from some of the conspiracy theorists out there thinking, what does this mean? And they have a lot of reasons for it, and they might be right, but that's not what they're showing to the public. So let's watch what they're showing to the public. I can find it here. Got so much crap all up here. Here we go. This should do it right here. And hopefully I have the sound fixed so you guys can hear it. So I'll make sure that happens before we go live. Oh, wait, that's too late. That's right now. Oh, too late. Let's see here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, thank you. Please take your seats.
I'm already seated, sir. But let's arrange this so you guys can see this better. Here we go. I'll scoot over here. Now let's see what this guy has to say.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the Joint Chiefs, Generals, Admirals, Commanders, Officers, Senior Enlisted, NCOs, Enlisted, and every member of our American military. Good morning. Good morning.
Wait, I have an emergency. I don't have a lighter. So you're just going to have to bear with me while I time travel. All right, I'm back. I time traveled. I have my lighter and everything. I'm prepared. The 7 Ps. Whoa. Look at that lady. That's weird. Is that a dude? I don't know. Dude looks like a lady. You remember that song? That was a cool song. Everybody knows that. Anyway, let's get back to the Hegseth.
Morning and welcome to the War Department. Because the era of the Department of Defense is over.
If this is the Department of War settings, we're gonna have to stop again and set up our war colors. There we go. Now we can deal with the war on crime, or the war on drugs, or the war on terrorism, or the war on fucking everything. Let's see what it is.
You see, the motto of my first platoon was, "Those who long for peace must prepare for war." This is, of course, not a new idea. This crowd knows that. The origin dates to the 4th century Rome and has been repeated ever since, including by our first commander-in-chief, George Washington, the first leader of the War Department. It captures a simple yet profound truth. To ensure peace, we must prepare for war. From this moment forward, the only mission of the newly restored Department of War is this: war fighting.
Wow. You would hope so. And you know, it's about time that they changed the name from the Department of Defense, because obviously there wasn't much defense going on. It's always kind of been the Department of Offense. Because you don't ever see them really defending our freedoms here at home, like they say. Like, you know, every war we go to, they say, hey, you know, they're over there dying and fighting for our freedoms here. The only problem with that is none of the people we went to war with were threatening our freedom. I mean, maybe Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, because, you know, they had plans to expand. Obviously, that was an argument that in time they made danger our freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. But far more often, the danger comes from right here at home, as, you know, the Department of Homeland Security and others always, you know, harped on American citizens that the biggest threat is domestic. And I agree with that, but it wasn't the people, it was the government. It was always the government threatening our rights here at home. So it never made sense for it to be the Department of Defense. It always made sense, maybe the Department of Offense or the Department of War. And that's why we got our war colors on right now. But let's let the man continue.
Preparing for war and preparing to win. Unrelenting and uncompromising in that pursuit. Not because we want war. No one here wants war. But it's because we love peace. We love peace for our fellow citizens. They deserve peace.
We do.
And they rightfully expect us to deliver it.
And we do.
Our number one job, of course, is to be strong so that we can prevent war in the first place. The president talks about it all the time. It's called peace through strength.
Is that kind of like the Second Amendment? You know, the idea behind that a lot of leftists and liberals don't get. People buy guns not because they want to shoot people. Well, most of the time, obviously. But just in case we're attacked at home. We want to be ready. We want to be in shape, mentally, physically, and armed enough to protect our family. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So the people that, you know, rail for gun control, like guns ever do anything on their own. It's an inanimate object, obviously. So you have to have a person operating it. And if they don't know how to operate it, or they're operating it for the wrong reasons, people get hurt. And when people are operating it for the right reasons, and they're operating it in the right way, and they're trained to do it, whether it's through self-training, practice, or you went somewhere to actually get trained, you're going to do better than the person that hasn't trained, that hasn't prepared, and is an unarmed victim. But, you know, what do I know? Let's back to Hegseth here.
And as history teaches us, the only people who actually deserve peace are those who are willing to wage war to defend it. That's why pacifism is so naive and dangerous. It ignores human nature and it ignores human history.
That's an absolute fact. Trying to pretend like human nature isn't human nature is utter stupidity. So you can't really be a pacifist if 90 other people out of 100 are not pacifist. So you have to be prepared to deal with those.
Either you protect your people and your sovereignty, or you will be subservient to something or someone.
Exact same argument for the Second Amendment, is it not? If someone breaks in your house and you're not prepared, guess what? You're going to be subservient to them and their illegal firearm or legal firearm. But obviously, if you're committing a crime with that firearm, it's no longer a legal firearm. But do they care? No. Are they in charge of you and your family when you're unarmed victim at home during a home invasion? Well, obviously, you're now subject to be subservient to your new master.
It's a truth as old as time. And since waging war is so costly in blood and treasure, we owe our republic a military that will win any war we choose or any war that is thrust upon us. Should our enemies choose foolishly to challenge us, they will be crushed by the violence, precision, and ferocity of the War Department.
Now, I think it's refreshing to hear someone utter words like this. You know, when you see these politicians get up there after tragedies and they say things like they don't condone violence, or, you know, they don't believe that or agree that violence should be done. The main one's the condoning, this term that gets used by left and right. We don't condone violence. We don't condone violence, which is an absolute lie and is ignoring not only human history, but it's ignoring American history. Our country is founded on violence. Give me liberty or give me death. They didn't tell you who was going to be the death part, right? Give me liberty or give me death. So that saying could mean death to me or death to the tyrant, whichever you want to, clamp onto and relate to. But this idea that we don't condone violence has been silly from the beginning when it was first uttered by anyone. Of course we condone violence. We condoned it in the Revolutionary War. We condoned it in the Civil War. We condoned it in World War I. We condoned it in World War II. We condoned it in Vietnam. We condoned it on and on and on. You can pick a conflict. We've condoned it. Not only that, but we condone it when the police do it. Or it should be condoned when private citizens defend themselves with the Second Amendment. That kind of violence should be condoned. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. It's literally written in our Constitution, and we have a long history of this country condoning violence. So to say that we as Americans on either side of the aisle don't condone violence is an utter lie. It's complete stupidity. It's a falsehood, a blatant lie. On its face, untrue historically and in reality now.
In other words, to our enemies, F-A-F-O. If necessary, our troops can translate that.
I could translate it right now for you. It means fuck around and find out. There's been a lot of fucking around and finding out all through human history.
That for you. Another way to put it is peace through strength, brought to you by the warrior ethos. And we are restoring both.
Good.
As President Trump has said, and he's right, we have the strongest, most powerful, most lethal, and most prepared military on the planet. That is true, full stop. Nobody can touch us. It's not even close. This is true largely because of the historic investments that he made in his first term, and we will continue in this term. But it's also true because of the leaders in this room. and the incredible troops that you all lead. But the world, and as the chairman mentioned, our enemies get a vote. You feel it, I feel it. This is a moment of urgency, mounting urgency. Enemies gather, threats grow. There is no time for games. We must be prepared. If we're going to prevent and avoid war, we must prepare now. We are the strength part of peace through strength. And either we're ready to win or we are not.
I don't know about you, but it kind of sounds like we might be preparing for war. Maybe I didn't understand what he said there, but it sounded like he said we better be ready for war. And not just in a hypothetical sense, but in a real, in-your-face, soon-to-be reality scenario.
You see, this urgent moment, of course, requires more troops, more munitions, more drones, more Patriots, more submarines, more B-21 bombers. It requires more innovation, more AI in everything, and ahead of the curve.
And we are somewhat ahead of the curve, as I've been reporting for a long time on Mountain High Time and on Civilization Cycle. Everything is going over to drones and AI. That will be the next major conflict that changes the way that we live. Will be a major conflict with drones, and not just abroad, but right here at home. So get prepared. And of course, they need more. I've been telling you, they're building more. More
cyber effects, more counter UAS, more space, more speed. America is the strongest, but we need to get stronger and quickly. The time is now, and the cause is urgent. The moment requires restoring and refocusing our defense industrial base, our shipbuilding industry, and onshoring all critical components. It requires, as President Trump has done, getting our allies and partners to step up and share the burden. America cannot do everything.
We cannot do everything. And when you're talking about NATO or the UN or Europe, the military portion of that is basically the United States. We fund it. We've been funding it. Matter of fact, the countries that are there really only have a choice of 2 weapons manufacturers, or 3 maybe now. You got China, Russia, and the United States. So Europe has been buying and has traditionally bought American-made war tools. So them paying their fair share, we're going to have a world war, right? We're not just going to pay for it ourselves, are we? No, of course not. They're going to get that money out of somebody. And if they want to be part of the world war or the new order of things, they're going to have to pay the check, or someone else is going to be coming to collect that check.
Free world requires allies with real hard power, real military leadership, and real military capabilities. The War Department is tackling and prioritizing all of these things. And I'll be giving a speech next month that'll showcase the speed, innovation, and generational acquisition reforms we are undertaking urgently. Likewise, the nature of the threats we face in our hemisphere and in deterring China is another speech for another day, coming soon.
Well, let's speak about it now. I've been talking about that, how they're redirecting our military forces to concentrate on the Western Hemisphere, where we live in the Americas, which also includes like a big portion of the Atlantic Ocean. It includes a big portion of the Pacific Ocean. And I think they know something that we don't. I think it's very possible that Russia will back China in invading Taiwan, and we are going to have a war in the Pacific while there's a war between Russia and different European factions on the other side that we're not going to get in right away. But like all the other wars, we'll eventually include ourselves in it. And he's talking about right there another speech, tightening up security and our war powers here in this hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, and not abroad over in a European theater, Middle Eastern theater, or a Asia Pacific Theater on the Far East, but instead the Far West.
This speech today, as I drink my coffee, this speech today is about people, and it's about culture. The topic today is about the nature of ourselves. Because no plan, no program, no reform, no formation will ultimately succeed unless we have the right people and the right culture at the War Department. If I've learned one core lesson in my 8 months in this job, it's that personnel is policy. Personnel is policy. The best way to take care of troops is to give them good leaders committed to the warfighting culture of the department. Not perfect leaders, good leaders. Competent, qualified, professional, agile, aggressive, innovative, risk-taking, apolitical, faithful to their oath and to the Constitution. Eugene Sledge, in his World War II memoir, wrote, quote, "War is brutish, inglorious, and a terrible waste. Combat leaves an indelible mark on those who are forced to endure it. The only redeeming factors are my comrades' incredible bravery and their devotion to each other." In combat, there are thousands of variables, as I learned in Iraq and Afghanistan, and as so many of you did in so many more places. Leaders can only control about 3 of them. You control how well you're trained, mostly how well you're equipped, and the last variable is how well you lead. After that, you're on your own. Our warfighters are entitled to be led by the best and most capable leaders. That is who we need you all to be. Even then, in combat, even if you do everything right, you may still lose people because the enemy always gets a vote. We have a sacred duty to ensure that our warriors are led by the most capable and qualified combat leaders. This is one thing you and I can control. And we owe it.
How are you going to do that if you have grown men playing dress up and pretending to be something that you can scientifically obviously prove that they're not, even though you don't need science to do that? You could see that with your own eyes, with your own deductive logic, that there are people out there that believe they are things that they're not. And a lot of them rose to the ranks of the military, to the top. And, you know, I don't know about you, but that was scaring the hell out of me to realize that completely insane people all the way. And I don't just mean because you don't agree with some political ideology, but I mean completely insane to the point where they thought that they were going to change reality for everybody else, for you to be forced to believe what they're pretending. Just like when you were kids and you had the, you know, friend or whatever that you visit that would make their Hot Wheels fly, or, you know, they would decide that they were He-Man and She-Ra, or was it She-Man and He-Ra? I don't know. But the fact is I didn't have to pretend with them. I could just leave and go hang out with somebody else as a kid. And then I grow up and they're trying to tell me that I have to pretend with people and believe their fantasies, their make-believe. And I didn't see anywhere in the Constitution where it says, you know, I have to participate in someone else's wild imagination. So I think you know what I'm saying.
Put to the force
Is he going to
to
get
deliver.
to that?
For too long, we've simply not done that. The military has been forced by foolish and reckless politicians to focus on the wrong things. In many ways, this speech is about fixing decades of decay. Some of it obvious, some of it hidden. Or as the chairman has put it, we are clearing out the debris, removing the distractions, clearing the way for leaders to be leaders. You might say we're ending the war on warriors.
The war.
I heard someone wrote a book about that. For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts. We've pretended that combat arms and non-combat arms are the same thing. We've weeded out so-called toxic leaders under the guise of double-blind psychology assessments, promoting risk-averse, go-along-to-get-along conformists instead. You name it, the department did it. Foolish and reckless political leaders set the wrong compass heading, and we lost our way. We became the woke department, but not anymore. Right now, I'm looking out at a sea of Americans who made a choice when they were young men and young women to do something most Americans will not, to serve something greater than yourselves, to fight for God and country, for freedom and the Constitution.
Damn, just 2 years ago, this would have been considered hate speech. Look at some of these guys' faces out there. Just that guy looks upset. The bald dude there, maybe he's just really tense. This guy, look at the faces on these guys. It looks like, some of them might be grinning and some of them are shocked. Can't believe what they're hearing. The woke is over. That's kind of what I was talking about a minute ago. Participating in delusion or fantasy or make-believe, pretend, and other of those things, none of them belonging at the head of our military. Obviously, we don't need people that are delusional. We need people that are real, that can see realities on the ground, or otherwise, how would you even wage war with another country that does recognize reality when you're in La La Land? It kind of reminds me of, like, what was his name? Baghdad Bob, that used to get on the TV. Just like the German forces would tell the Germans that they were winning the war when, they were about to get flattened. Baghdad Bob did the same thing. He went on Iraqi TV telling the Iraqi people they were smashing the Americans. We don't want to be that. We don't want to be the Baghdad Bob make-believe, pretend about things.
You made a choice to serve when others did not, and I commend you. You are truly the best of America. But this does not mean, and this goes for all of us, that our path to this auditorium on this day was a straight line, or that the conditions of the formations we lead are where we want them to be.
Well, it sure wasn't straight, was it?
You love your country, and we love this uniform, which is why we must do better. We just have to be honest. We have to say with our mouths what we see with our eyes, to just tell it like it is in plain English, to point out the obvious things right in front of us.
I don't know. It kind of sounds like my old grandpappy that went and fought the Nazis, or my other grandpappy that went and fought the Tojo. Both of them believed in, simple things like looking somebody in the eye when you talk to them, being trustworthy, making sure your word meant something, that if you promised something, you would try your damnedest to do it, or at least have a legitimate reason why you couldn't, and then you would make it up later and you would take the blame and take responsibility for your failures. And then this whole era of changing words around to mean things they didn't used to mean, or to come up with new phrases to describe things that they can't explain in plain English, is a bunch of craziness. And, I don't know about you, but like I said, I was raised by a whole nother generation that believed in saying what you mean and meaning what you say. But not only that, knowing what you're talking about, or being able to admit that you don't. And if you're just theorizing, you say, if, I think, maybe, could be, should, kind of like modern science articles, even though what they're saying, they're claiming is fact, and you should accept it as fact, despite using all of these we think, maybe, could be, possible, is possible.
That's what leaders must do. We cannot go another day without directly addressing the plank in our own eye, without addressing the problems in our own commands and in our own formations. This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to
Very toxic.
rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses.
Dudes in dresses. I don't know if that's what you voted for. I can't vote. I didn't vote because I can't vote. But if that's what you voted for, that's what you're getting. No more dudes in dresses.
No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that shit. I've made it.
Are they really done with that shit, or are we just going to see a massive waves of double down of Marxist delusional ideologies here in about 3 years?
My mission to uproot the obvious distractions that made us less capable and less lethal. That said, the War Department requires the next step. Underneath the woke garbage is a deeper problem, and a more important problem that we are fixing and fixing fast. Common sense is back at the White House, so making the necessary changes is actually pretty straightforward. President Trump expects it. And the litmus test for these changes?
You know, before I go there, I was just noticing, you do realize that this guy's a combat vet that's missing a leg. And he's walking around on a robotic aid to walk around. And he's walking around up on the stage, not using a teleprompter. This is just coming right out of his mouth. He doesn't even have notes. Unlike, television or most politicians that have pre-written speeches, usually written by someone else, including, but not limited to, artificial intelligence. This is kind of, refreshing to see somebody up there on stage that is not reading a script, but this is coming right out of his mind.
It's pretty simple. Would I want my eldest son, who is 15 years old, eventually joining the types of formations that we are currently wielding? If in any way the answer to that is no, or even yes, but, then we're doing something wrong. Because my son is no more important than any other American citizen who dons the cloth of our nation. He is no more important than your son.
Hold on. This is what I want to see. These guys are in pain. Let's see if I can get it here.
Than your son.
All right, hold on. I messed it up.
Formations that we are currently wielding. If in any way the answer to that is no, or even yes, but, then we're doing something wrong. Because my son
Look at these scowls on these guys' faces.
is no more important than.
Look at that guy right there in the middle. He looks like he's riding a turtle right now. These guys, well, this guy back here looks like he's on Thorazine. But look at all the scowls. You don't see any smiles. Look, this guy looks upset. This guy's falling asleep. That dude is asleep. And yeah, just every time they show this, I want you guys to pay attention at the faces that you're seeing. The only thing they laughed at is the fuck around and find out thing, and it's been pretty quiet. Now, I know they're a bunch of stiffs, military people. They're not going to jump up and start, clapping or acting like clowns or anything at every point. However, there seems to be people here that look a little upset. Maybe it's because they're worried because he knows they're talking about them specifically. Just saying.
Any other American citizen who dons the cloth of our nation.
Look at that guy. I think he just let go of the turtle. He ain't riding it no more. He looks very constipated there.
He is no more important than your son. All precious souls made in the image and likeness of God. Every parent deserves to know that their son or their daughter that joins our ranks is entering exactly the kind of unit that the Secretary of War would want his son to join. Think of it as the golden rule test. Jesus said, "Do unto others that's what you would have done unto yourself." It's the ultimate simplifying test of truth. The new War Department golden rule is this: do unto your unit as you would have done unto your own child's unit. Would you want him serving with fat or unfit or undertrained troops?
Hell no.
Or alongside people who can't meet basic standards? Or in a unit where standards were lowered so certain types of troops could make it in?
Fuck no.
In a unit where leaders were promoted for reasons other than merit, performance, and warfighting? The answer is not just no, it's hell no.
No, it's fuck no.
This means at the War Department, first and foremost, we must restore a ruthless, dispassionate, and common sense application of standards. I don't want my son serving alongside troops who are out of shape, or in combat unit with females who can't meet the same combat arms physical standards as men,
Hell no.
or troops who are not fully proficient on their assigned weapons, platform, or task,
Of course
or
not.
under a leader who was the first, but not the best. Standards must be uniform, gender neutral.
Yeah, a lot of people are gonna be pissed off with this, definitely. But what he's saying is not crazy. I mean, think about it. If it was you, or like you said, your kid, do you really want your kid out there in another country having to combat people that are also trained in techniques, tactics, combat, and to know that there's a good chance that a big percentage of the fighting force with your child is incompetent or couldn't even meet the standards that was needed for the job, especially that part what he said about being proficient on the weapons platform that they're supposed to be using. You don't want a bunch of fumbling, bumbling, incompetent mess going on, or you just get a bunch of dead people. How can you even argue with this idea?
And high. If not,
Wait.
They're not
I'm
standard.
high.
Standards as men, or troops who are not fully proficient on their assigned weapons, platform, or task, or under a leader who was the first, but not the best. Standards must be uniform, gender neutral, and high.
I'm high.
If not, they're not standards. They're just suggestions. Suggestions that get our sons and daughters killed. When it comes to combat arms units, and there are many different stripes across our joint force, the era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now.
Good.
At every level, either you can meet the standard, either you can do the job, either you are disciplined, fit, and trained, or you are out.
And I don't even see how anybody could argue with that. Even when I started working as a young teen, it came down to, are you going to work? Are you going to show up? Can you do the job? If you can't, go home. You're fired. Don't show up. It's just like if you had a plumber come to your house. Do you want the whatever problem it was still leaking when the plumber left? Of course not. They would be liable. Every single job out there, usually, if it's a real job, has to meet a certain set of standards to be considered professional. Electricians, plumbers, carpenters, masons, whatever it is. They have to be held accountable for a shitty job. So, of course, you would want your police, your military, and all of these people to be competent and good at their job. Now, we can talk about the police on another topic because they're a group of people that still always have been and seemingly always will be sovereign citizens that don't have to follow the law, don't get held to the same standards as any other profession. And it's really hard to bring them to account when they don't do their job right or they do it wrong or corrupt, or they just, commit crimes. They commit crimes and they don't get arrested for them. They don't get prosecuted for them. And even if they do get fired, they usually end up somewhere else doing the same job. But that's not the topic here. It just seems a little bit related.
And that's why today, at my direction, and this is the first of 10 Department of War directives that are arriving at your commands as we speak and in your inbox. Today, at my direction, each service will ensure that every requirement for every combat MOS, for every designated combat arms position, returns to the highest male standard only. Because this
Good.
job is life or death. Standards must be met. And not just met, at every level, we should seek to exceed the standard, to push the envelope, to compete. It's common sense and core to who we are and what we do. It should be in our DNA.
Talk about a breath of fresh air. And there are people, obviously, there's going to be tons of far leftists, people with, the identity politics people that are going to be really upset about everything he says. I bet by tomorrow afternoon, Wednesday night, there's going to be probably thousands, if not 100,000 articles talking about, how misogynistic, racist, or transphobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic. There's all the phobics, arachnophobia, all of it. I'm afraid of spiders. Okay, good job. Good for you. But there's going to be so many people offended by this, calling all kinds of names. There's going to be pundits and military experts saying, what does this guy know? Well, he's a combat vet, so he got to see it from the other end of the orders, which, in my opinion, knowing lots of combat vets and people in the military throughout my whole life, I trust them more than management for decision making on some things, obviously. And so now we have somebody that's from the inside, that's the order taker at the head. And I'm sure it ruffled a lot of feathers with a lot of older people that thought they should be or were going to get that job. But it wasn't them. It's not them. It's this guy. And he making sense to me, just common sense.
Today, at my direction, we are also adding a combat field test for combat arms units that must be executable in any environment at any time and with combat equipment. These tests, they'll look familiar. They'll resemble the Army Expert Physical Fitness Assessment or the Marine Corps Combat Fitness Test.
You mean no more fat people?
I'm also directing that warfighters in combat jobs execute their service fitness test at a gender-neutral, age-normed male standard scored above 70%.
Good.
It all starts with physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so
With
can
one
every
leg.
member of our joint force. Frankly,
With one leg, no less.
it's tiring to look out at combat formations or really any formation and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test.
Good.
And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the joint force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year,
Good.
as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year, every year of service. Also today, at my direction, every warrior across our joint force is required to do PT every duty day. Should be common sense. I mean, most units do that already.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as I know, that's the way it was forever. They had to do PT every day and take a physical fitness test twice a year to prove that they were doing what they were getting paid for, which is to stay in shape and be fight ready. That's what they get paid by the government for. That's why they make them do that. They took a job. It's just like any other job. They expect this, 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 and this. Even if you went to IHOP, they would expect you to be there on time, wear their uniform, and do certain duties. It's no different if it's military. Of course, you would expect them to be able to do their duties and to wear their uniform and be clean and uniform, in shape, ready to go. Ready to go, yo. Otherwise, you shouldn't have signed up to be a soldier.
But we're codifying it. And we're not talking like hot yoga and stretching. Real hard PT, either as a unit or as an individual. At every level, from the Joint Chiefs to everyone in this room to the youngest private, leaders set the standard. And so many of you do this already. Active, guard, and reserve.
This shit just make me want to do some push-ups right now. I'm feeling a little lacking as a civilian.
This also means grooming standards. No more beards, long hair, superficial individual expression. We're going to cut our hair, shave our beards, and adhere to standards.
You mean I'm not going to see the painted nail, dyed hair, not wearing your cover Air Force and Army running around the town that I live in? Because I see that constantly. Actually, I've been seeing that probably since about 2008. I lived on Andrews Air Force Base for several years. And I would see that all the time. People with their clothes messed up, not wearing their cover outside, women with painted nails, weaves, dyed hair, makeup. You would see men fat, women fat. And you're sitting there thinking, if I'm a civilian and I'm depending on them, maybe I should just depend on myself. I mean, that doesn't give me, much hope. Like, say you moved over to one of the bases overseas and there would be a real possibility of whatever airmen or service members, whatever branch they're in, having to deal with the outside or imminent threat on the base where their families live. But in prior years, they disarm them. So what they would be doing I don't know how they're doing it now, but a few years back, they would have people over deployed like in Turkey and other places, completely defenseless inside. So if the perimeter was ever breached, they would be hiding, locking doors, and have no way to defend themselves despite being military members. They would have to depend on the MPs or security forces or, for troops to get their shit together to get armed if they had enough time. But if their perimeter was breached and people were already being, attacked and the lights were out, which happened several times at several bases. I know a lot of people know what I'm talking about. They're just sitting ducks and they're waiting to find out if it fizzles out or, the security forces or MPs or whoever take care of it.
Because it's like the broken windows theory of policing. It's like when you let the small stuff go, the big stuff eventually goes. So you have to address the small stuff. This is on duty in the field and in the rear. If you want a beard, you can join special forces. If not, then shave. We don't have a military full of Nordic pagans. But unfortunately, we have had leaders who either refuse to call BS and enforce standards, or leaders who felt like they were not allowed to enforce standards. Both are unacceptable. And that's why today, at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done. Simply put, if you do not meet the male-level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position or a new profession.
Amen.
I sincerely appreciate the proactive efforts the secretaries have already taken in some of those areas, service secretaries. And these directives are intended to simply accelerate those efforts. On the topic of standards, allow me a few words to talk about toxic leaders. Upholding and demanding high standards is not toxic. Enforcing high standards, not toxic leadership. Leading warfighters toward the goals of high, gender-neutral, and uncompromising standards in order to forge a...
Matter of fact, I think they should be able to get high. Speaking of that, on their time off, of course, not on duty, but when they get off and they go back to their barracks or whatever, they let them drink alcohol like fishes. They're drinking like fishes. I don't know if they're going to address that, but obviously they're not going to let them smoke the tweeds. However, it might be more beneficial than letting a bunch of young people go get drunk nonstop. But hey, if they get up and they do their PT, then
cohesive...
Gonna keep it mellow, responsible night for a polite fellow. Say hello to my friends and comrades, don't tend to offend, so I say perhaps just 2 drinks. As a social courtesy, we can raise a glass to our past fraternity, and certainly a perfectly normal and formal get-together, but it's been forever since we gathered, so whatever. Just 3 drinks. For the sake of the old times, proceed with tequila shots with a dish full of cold limes, the whole 9, laughing, remembering all the old lines. Never used to work, but I could give them another try. You know, take the edge off. I've had a hard week, I deserve to get soft. Pick up another round as my friends depart, and they may not stick around, but I just got started. Feel so much better than usual, I feel indisputable. Oh, I think that I might be beautiful. Just 5 drinks. Fucking treat myself for the Dom Perignon from the back of the top shelf. Spend like God, put on airs to sell it. Crowd pretends not to care, but I know they're jealous. Let's lift the dogs of war. I'm gonna start a fucking riot till I'm tossed out the front door. 0 to 60, I can turn on a dime. I'm hitting bottom and I'm feeling like committing a crime. Maybe I've lost count. I can't remember the night, what I drank, or the amount. I'm fading in and out. My very consciousness is crumbling. Sorry, was I saying something? Strolling out of the hospital, is it hair of the dog? If you stay drunk and don't stop at all, another night losing at more than I can afford. Was I just feeling bored? Am I that insecure? Feel so much better than usual, I feel indisputable. Oh, but now I'm feeling so beautiful. Don't wake me up from this spell. I wonder if I'm still breathing. I know that I will be ugly when I feel like myself again. Oh, but now I'm feeling so beautiful.
That's very dirty.
formidable and lethal Department of War is not toxic. It is our duty, consistent with our constitutional oath. Real toxic leadership is endangering subordinates with low standards. Real toxic leadership is promoting people based on immutable characteristics or quotas instead of based on merit. Real toxic leadership is promoting destructive ideologies that are an anathema to the Constitution and the laws of nature and nature's God, as Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence. The definition of toxic has been turned upside down, and we're correcting that. That's why today, at my direction, we're undertaking a full review of the department's definitions of so-called toxic leadership, bullying, and hazing, to empower leaders to enforce standards without fear of retribution or second guessing. Of course, you can't do like nasty bullying and hazing. We're talking about words like bullying and hazing and toxic. They've been weaponized and bastardized inside our formations, undercutting commanders and NCOs. No more. Setting, achieving, and maintaining high standards is what you all do. And if that makes me toxic, then so be it.
You
Second.
toxic fucker.
Today, at our direction, we're ensuring that every service, every unit, every schoolhouse, and every form of professional military education conduct an immediate review of their standards. Now, we've done this in many places already, but today it goes across the entire Department of War. Any place where tried and true physical standards were altered, especially since 2015 when combat arms standards were changed to ensure females could qualify, must be returned to their original standard. Other standards have been manipulated to hit racial quotas as well, which is just as unacceptable. This too must end. Merit only. The president talks about it all the time, merit-based.
Meritocracy.
Here are two basic frameworks I urge you to pursue in this process. Standards I call, my staff's heard all about them, the 1990 test and the E6 test. The 1990s test is simple. What were the military standards in 1990? And if they have changed, tell me why. Was it a necessary change based on the evolving landscape of combat? Or was the change due to a softening, weakening, or gender-based pursuit of other priorities? 1990s seems to be as good a place to start as any. And the E6 test. Ask yourself, does what you're doing make the leadership, accountability, and lethality efforts of an E6, or frankly an O3, does it make it easier or more complicated? Does the change empower staff sergeants, petty officers, and tech sergeants to get back to basics? The answer should be a resounding yes. The E6 test or O3 test clarifies.
He watches Ancient Aliens, doesn't he? The answer, ancient astronauts' theories believe, is a resounding yes.
A lot, and it clarifies quickly. Because war does not care if you're a man or a woman. Neither does the enemy. Nor does the weight of your rucksack, the size of an artillery round, or the body weight of a casualty on the battlefield who must be carried. This, and I want to be very clear about this, this is not about preventing women from serving. We very much value the impact of female troops. Our female officers and NCOs are the absolute best in the world. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. It will also mean that weak men won't qualify because we're not playing games. This is combat. This is life or death. As we all know, this is you versus an enemy hell-bent on killing you. To be an effective, lethal fighting force, you must trust that the warrior alongside you in battle is capable, truly physically capable of doing what is necessary under fire. You know, this is the only standard you would want for your kids and for your grandkids. Apply the War Department Golden Rule, the 1990 test, and the E6 test, and it's really hard to go wrong. Third, we are attacking and ending the walking on eggshells and zero defect command culture. A risk-averse culture means officers execute not to lose instead of to win. A risk-averse culture means NCOs are not empowered to enforce standards. Commanders and NCOs don't take necessary risks or make tough adjustments for fear of rocking the boat or making mistakes. A blemish-free record is what peacetime leaders covet the most, which is the worst of all incentives. We, as senior leaders, need to end the poisonous culture of risk aversion and empower our NCOs at all levels to enforce standards. Truth be told, for the most part, we don't need new standards. We just need to reestablish a culture where enforcing standards is possible. And that's why today at my direction, I'm issuing new policies that will overhaul the IG, EO, and MEO processes. I call it the No More Walking on Eggshells policy. We are liberating commanders and NCOs. We are liberating you. We are overhauling an inspector general process, the IG, that has been weaponized, putting complainers, ideologues, and poor performers in the driver's seat. We're doing the same with the equal opportunity and military equal opportunity policies, the EO and MEO at our department. No more frivolous complaints, no more anonymous complaints, no more repeat complainants, no more smearing reputations, no more endless waiting, no more legal limbo, no more sidetracking careers, no more walking on eggshells. Of course, being a racist has been illegal in our formation since 1948. The same goes for sexual harassment. Both are wrong and illegal. Those kinds of infractions will be ruthlessly enforced. But telling someone to shave or get a haircut or to get in shape or to fix their uniform or to show up on time or to work hard, that's exactly the kind of discrimination we want. We are not civilians. You are not civilians. You are set apart for a distinct purpose. So we, as a department, need to stop acting and thinking like civilians and get back to basics and put the power back in the hands of commanders and NCOs. Commanders and NCOs who make life and death decisions. Commanders and NCOs who enforce standards and ensure readiness. Commanders and NCOs who in this War Department have to look in the mirror and have to pass the golden rule test. My kids, your kids, America's sons and daughters. So I urge you all here today and those watching, take this guidance and run with it. The core of this speech is the 10 directives we're announcing today. They were written for you, for Army leadership, for Navy leadership.
Let's do a crowd pan right here. Let's look at the faces again. That guy's smiling. This guy, there's that bald dude again. He still looks like he might be needing to go run off and take a shit. We're going to see how this is, in the following week, how this was accepted by these people, because I know a lot of them don't want to hear it. This isn't the military of your dad or your grandpa. This is something different. This is a military that we known was infiltrated by Marxists and people with Marxist attitude. Even like Milley. I can't believe that guy hasn't, been brought up on charges, court-martialed, charged with treason. He literally called China behind the president's back and told him, don't worry about it. We'll tell you if we're going to attack you, which is treason. Unless, it was disinformation, which we now know it wasn't, except for Milley did put out a lot of misinformation. And he was happy with the dudes in the dresses, along with a lot of other ones.
Leadership, for Marine Corps leadership, for Air Force leadership, Space Force leadership. These directives are designed to take the monkey off your back and put you, the leadership, back in the driver's seat. Move out with urgency because we have your back. I have your back. And the Commander-in-Chief has your back. And when we give you this guidance, we know mistakes will be made. It's the nature of leadership. But you should not pay for earnest mistakes for your entire career. And that's why today, at my direction, we're making changes to the retention of adverse information on personnel records that will allow leaders with forgivable, earnest, or minor infractions to not be encumbered by those infractions in perpetuity. People make honest mistakes, and our mistakes should not define an entire career. Otherwise, we only try not to make mistakes, and that's not the business we're in. We need risk takers and aggressive leaders and a culture that supports you. Fourth, at the War Department, promotions across the Joint Force will be based on one thing:
Merit.
Colorblind, gender neutral, merit-based. The entire promotion process, including evaluations of warfighting capabilities, is being thoroughly re-examined. We've already done a lot in this area, but more changes are coming soon. We'll promote top performing officers and NCOs faster and get rid of poor performers more quickly. Evaluations, education, and field exercises will become real evaluations, not box checks, for every one of us at every level. These same reforms happened before World War II as well. General George Marshall and Secretary of War Henry Stimson did the same thing. And we won a world war because of it. As it happens, when he started the job, Chairman Kane gave me a frame and a photo to hang in my office. A matching frame and photo hangs in his. It's a photo of Marshall and Stimson preparing for World War II. Those two leaders famously kept the door open between their offices for the entirety of the war. They worked together, civilian and uniform, every single day. Chairman Kane and I do the same. There is no daylight between us. Our doors are always open. Our job together is to ensure our military is led by the very best, ready to answer the nation's call. Fifth, as you have seen, and the media has obsessed over, I have fired a number of senior officers since taking over.
Which ones?
The previous chairman, other members of the Joint Chiefs, combatant commanders, and other commanders. The rationale for me has been straightforward. It's nearly impossible to change a culture with the same people who helped create or even benefited from that culture, even if that culture was created by a previous president and previous secretary. My approach has been simple. When in doubt, assess the situation, follow your gut, and if it's the best for the military, make a change.
I always thought it was one of my favorite rules. Not that, but every time I go to a place, I know this is sidetracking here, but anytime I go travel anywhere, I study the area. I not only look at, what people are saying there, I look at maps of the area, because it always goes back to the old adage, when in doubt, know your way out.
We all serve at the pleasure of the president every single day. But in many ways, it's not their fault. It's not your fault. As foolish and reckless as the woke department was, those officers were following elected political leadership. An entire generation of generals and admirals were told that they must parrot the insane fallacy that, quote, our diversity is our strength. Of course, we know our unity is our strength. They had to put out dizzying DEI and LGBTQI plus statements. They were told females and males are the same thing, or that males who think they're females is totally normal. They were told that we need a green fleet and electric tanks. They were told to kick out Americans who refuse an emergency vaccine. They followed civilian policies set by foolish and reckless political leaders.
They weren't foolish. These are Marxist people it's no accident. They knew what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing when they did all this. It was not only demoralization, but demoralization. Is that a word? I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean. Making things totally immoral at the same time as demoralizing people, because they know that some things are crazy or wrong or whatever. But he's kind of framing it in a way like these guys, it's not their fault because they didn't know what they were doing. It was just foolish. No. They knew what they were doing. They were doing it on purpose. It was subversion, destruction of our way of life on purpose. At the behest of who? Well, there's lots of groups pushing for those ideals.
Our job, my job, has been to determine which leaders simply did what they must to answer the prerogatives of civilian leadership, and which leaders are truly invested in the woke department and therefore incapable of embracing the War Department and executing new lawful orders. That's it. It's that simple. So for the past 8 months, we've gotten a good look under the hood of our officer corps. We've done our best to thoroughly assess the human terrain. We've had to make trade-offs and some difficult decisions. It's more of an art than a science. We have been and will continue to be judicious, but also expeditious. The new compass heading is clear.
I don't know, but this guy that's doing the audio video for the Pentagon or the Department of War, he might need to be replaced by somebody. You hear that stupid noise every time he's moving the camera? Like, that's kind of unprofessional. We would like to hear these things crystal clear without distraction. Just FYI, if anybody's listening. Of course they're not.
Out with the Shirellis, the Mackenzies, and the Millies, and in with the Stockdales, the Schwarzkopfs, and the Pattons.
What about the Flynns?
More leadership changes will be made, of that I'm certain. Not because we want to, but because we must. Once again, this is life and death. The sooner we have the right people, the sooner we can advance the right policies. Personnel is policy. But I look out at this group, and I see great Americans. Leaders who have given decades to our great republic, at great sacrifice to yourselves and to your families. But if the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign.
Wow. That was awesome right there. And I was just thinking that, judging by the faces of the crowd, there's a lot of upset individuals in there. Maybe they could self-deport. I mean, resign. You know what I'm saying?
We would thank you for your service. But I suspect, I know, the overwhelming majority of you feel the opposite. These words make your hearts full. You love the War Department because you love what you do, the profession of arms. You are hereby liberated to be an apolitical, hard-charging, no-nonsense, constitutional leader that you joined the military to be. We need you locked in on the M.
Hold on. I'm just because I got these earphones in and I'm watching this with you for the first time that I've watched it. And it sounds like there's a guy eating corn nuts that's operating the camera. I don't know what's up with that. I mean, I have my own sound effects, but. Oh, and in case you were wondering, this is completely tobacco. Only tobacco. Don't worry about it. I know how you conservatives get upset about the tweed smokers, which is really silly because, another little side tangent, you got all these conservatives like they're on a war with other people that smoke. Meanwhile, they drink themselves into a stupor and become dumb beasts once they're fully engaged in their alcoholism. And these are the same people that will, talk shit about people smoking rope. And then when they get their buzz on in a social engagement, then they puff on the tweeds too. Then Monday morning, they go back to acting like they don't do that and become somewhat snobs, acting like, the pot smokers. But what's really funny about it is it seems like it was a planned thing to paint pot smokers into a window of leftism, which I don't agree with. I'm not a leftist. I don't like communism or socialism or big government or none of that stuff. But I do like to decide what goes into my own body. It is my body, my choice, not somebody else's body, my body with my DNA. I should be able to decide whether or not I take an experimental vaccine or shot or whatever it is, just like he was just saying. Some people didn't want to do that. I got banned on YouTube. Now they say they're not doing it. Not true. I tried to get all of the old channels back because I was targeted for political and what they called misinformation in regards to elections or medicine. Even though most of what they were claiming was completely debunked and wrong, they double and triple down on banning people, and specific people, they don't get any reach. It's called shadow banning, and they still do it. And of course, within like 10 minutes, I got an automated message for each one of those canceled channels that I tried to get. So I know no one looked at it. They just sent an auto reply that said, no, they were right. They banned me for good reasons, and they're going to keep those channels off. So now I have to, be careful what I say, because even though we live in a free country with free speech, you still have people pretending to be Stasi. And in fact, if you remember back a few years back, they were literally hiring Stasi at some of the social media companies to be in charge of the censorship. And they will not allow me to be monetized. That's why none of my channels, ever got to be monetized. I think one of the first ones did, and I enjoyed being monetized for a while, but I've been on here for years without being monetized. But now you can help out and go around YouTube that takes like 40% anyway, even if you were giving me those super chats. And I get it. People like to see their name up there on the screen. And, it's not about that for me. It's just, keeping the bills together, staying on air. That's what it's about for me. So I'm not worried about being monetized, but I do basically do this for free. So just a hint, you can YOLO mofos. You can buy me a coffee. You can scan that code, or you can PayPal a mofo. It's up to you. All my content's free. Hint, hint. No, I'm just joking. But anyway, back to our presentation.
Not the D, the E, or the I, not the DEI or the DIE of dime. By that I mean the M, military, of the instruments of national power. We have entire departments across the government dedicated to diplomatic, informational, and economic lines of effort. We do the M. Nobody else does. And our GoFos need to master it in every domain and every scenario. No more distractions, no more political ideologies, no more debris. Now, of course, we're going to disagree at times. We would not be Americans if we didn't. Being a leader in a large organization like ours means having frank conversations and differences of opinion. You will win some arguments and you will lose some arguments. But when civilian leaders issue lawful orders, we execute. We are professionals in the profession of arms. Our entire constitutional system is predicated upon this understanding. Now, seems like a small thing, but it's not. This includes as well the behavior of our troops online. To that end, I want to thank and recognize the services for their new proactive social media policies. Use them. Anonymous, online, or keyboard complaining is not worthy of a warrior. It's cowardice masquerading as conscience. Anonymous, unit-level social media pages that trash commanders, demoralize troops, and undermine unit cohesion must not be tolerated. Again, O3s, E6s. Sixth, we must train and we must maintain. Any moment that we are not training on our mission or maintaining our equipment is a moment we are less prepared for preventing or winning the next war. That is why today, at my direction, we are drastically reducing the ridiculous amount of mandatory training that individuals and units must execute. We've already ended the most egregious. Now we're giving you back real time. Less PowerPoint briefings and fewer online courses, more time in the motor pool, and more time on the range. Our job is to make sure you have the money, equipment, weapons, and parts to train and maintain, and then you take it from there. You all know this because it's common sense. The tougher and the higher the standards in our units, the higher the retention rates in those units. Warriors want to be challenged. Troops want to be tested. When you don't train and you don't maintain, you demoralize. And that's when our best people decide to take their talents to the civilian world. The leaders who created the woke department have already driven out too many hard chargers. We reverse that trend right now. There is no world in which high-intensity war exists without pain, agony, and human tragedy. We are in a dangerous line of work. You are in a dangerous line of work. We may lose good people. But let no warrior cry out from the grave, if only I had been properly trained. We will not lose warfighters because we failed to train or equip them or resource them. Shame on us if we do. Train like your warriors' lives depend on it, because they do. To that point, basic training is being restored to what it should be: scary, tough, and disciplined. We're empowering drill sergeants to instill healthy fear in new recruits.
You mean they won't be able to use their cell phones and skip their PT and all that stuff like they've been doing? People have been making fun of for at least a decade how ridiculous it's become compared to the way our forefathers trained for things. So it's a good thing.
Ensuring that future warfighters are forged. Yes, they can shark attack, they can toss bunks, they can swear, and yes, they can put their hands on recruits. This does not mean they can be reckless or violate the law, but they can use tried and true methods to motivate new recruits, to make them the warriors they need to be. Back to basics at basic as well. Of course, and you know this, basic training is not where mission readiness should end. The nature of the evolving threat environment demands that everyone in every job must be ready to join the fight if needed. A core credo of the Marine Corps is every Marine a rifleman. It means that everyone, regardless of MOS, is proficient enough to engage an enemy threat at sea, in the air, or in a so-called rear area. We need to ensure that every member of our uniformed military maintains baseline proficiency in basic combat skills, especially because the next war, like the last, will likely not have a rear area. Finally, as President Trump rightly pointed out when he changed the department name, the United States has not won a major theater war since the name was changed to the Department of Defense in 1947. One conflict stands out in stark contrast: the Gulf War. Why? Well, there's a number of reasons, but it was a limited mission with overwhelming force and a clear end state. But why did we execute and win the Gulf War the way we did in 1991? There's two overwhelming reasons. One was President Ronald Reagan's military buildup gave an overwhelming advantage. And two, military and Pentagon leadership had previous formative battlefield experiences. The men who led this department during the Gulf War were mostly combat veterans of the Vietnam War. They said never again to mission creep or nebulous end states. The same holds true today. Our civilian and military leadership is chock full of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan who say never again to nation building and nebulous end states. This clear-eyed view, all the way in the White House, combined with President Trump's military buildup, postures us for future victories if, and we will, and when we embrace the War Department. And we must. We are preparing every day. We have to be prepared for war, not for defense. We're training warriors, not defenders. We fight wars to win, not to defend. Defense is something you do all the time. It's inherently reactionary and can lead to overuse, overreach, and mission creep. War is something you do sparingly, on our own terms, and with clear aims. We fight to win. We unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters. That's all I ever wanted as a platoon leader. And it's all my E6 squad leaders ever wanted, back to that E6 rule. We let our leaders fight their formations, and then we have their back. It's very simple, yet incredibly powerful. A few months ago, I was at the White House when President Trump announced his Liberation Day for America's trade policy. It was a landmark day. Well, today is another Liberation Day. The liberation of America's warriors, in name, in deed, and in authorities. You kill people and break things for a living. You are not politically correct and don't necessarily belong always in polite society. We are not an army of one. We are a joint force of millions of selfless Americans. We are warriors. We are purpose-built, not for fair weather, blue skies, or calm seas. We were built to load up in the back of helicopters, 5 tons, or Zodiacs in the dead of night, in fair weather or foul, to go to dangerous places, to find those who would do our nation harm, and deliver justice on behalf of the American people in close and brutal combat if necessary. You are different. We fight not because we hate what's in front of us. We fight because we love what's behind us. You see, the Ivy League faculty lounges will never understand us, and that's okay, because they could never do what you do. The media will mischaracterize us, and that's okay, because deep down they know the reason they can do what they do is you. In this profession, you feel comfortable inside the violence so that our citizens can live peacefully. Lethality is our calling card, and victory our only acceptable end state. In closing, a few weeks ago, at our monthly Pentagon Christian prayer service, I recited a commander's prayer. It's a simple yet meaningful prayer for wisdom for commanders and leaders. I encourage you to look it up if you've never seen it. But the prayer, it ends like this. And most of all, Lord, please keep my soldiers safe. Lead them, guide them, protect them, watch over them. And as you gave all of yourself for me, help me give all of myself for them. And amen. I have prayed this prayer many times since I've had the privilege of being your secretary. And I will continue to pray this prayer for each of you as you command and lead our nation's finest. Go forth and do good things, hard things. President Trump has your back, and so do I. And you'll hear from him shortly. Move out and draw fire, because we are the War Department.
And there it is. That's Mr. Hegseth's speech there, which I thought was a pretty good one. I haven't heard, usually these are really, really boring speeches. But I think he did a good job. And I know there's going to be a lot of snowflakes, leftists, hardliners, warhawks, neocons, the list goes on, of people that are probably going to be upset at this guy for this speech, and especially because it's public. Now, to all the conspiracy theory people that thought this was about something more, it might be, because you have no idea what wasn't televised and what kind of meetings kind of happened in the background. But are we going to go to war? It looks like it. Let's see here. Let's look into how it looks like we're about to go to war.
audience to give. Press me personality. Still a transfixed me. Electric sheep and dreaming of your face. Enjoy you from the chemical comfort of America. Come on, come on, into 1984. Yeah, 3, 2, 1. Lights, camera, transaction. Lights, camera, transaction. Almost up. All forget that they're the mom, edging in towards the flame, burning to obscurity. Still a transfixed me, electric sheep, dreaming up your face. Judge you from the carcass of comfort of America. Come on, to 1984. Yeah, 3, 2, 1. Lights, camera, yeah. Come on, into 1984. Yeah, 3, 2, 1. Lights, camera, transaction.
That's very dirty.
At any time. But I think in the Western Hemisphere is most likely. And we'll just check out some of the headlines that are kind of crazy. But obviously, they're trying to let us know. Get us prepared. It will happen. It's just a matter of time. When and what kind of war will it be? Will it be AI? Will it be kinetic with troops and robots and things like that? Or are we just going to skip to the end and go boom, boom, and get rid of a few cities and a large portion of the population in the aftermath? So this is a good one. Let's start on this one right here. It says AI fighter jets, cockroach spies inside the changing business of war. Russia's war on Ukraine changed the course of a generation of startups and investors that have applied a new business model to Europe's military buildup. And there is quite a big reshuffling and buildup. Not to mention like 5 countries that have instituted the draft and started conscripting their citizens when they're not even at war yet. But this article here, let's see what it says. The trillions that governments around the globe are spending to prepare for a new era of high-tech warfare is more combustible world are transforming the way our modern nations equip their fighting forces. In Europe, where Russia is using drones to bombard Ukraine, and also it's weird that they didn't mention Ukraine has been bombarding Russia with drones for quite some time. And even the new North Atlantic Treaty Organization's resolve, which is basically funded and armed by the United States. So they're not going to do anything without the U.S. A new generation of startups is sidestepping how countries have traditionally built their arsenals. Instead of waiting for governments to propose and fund projects, private investors are using their own money to speed up financing, research, and prototypes, hoping that the buyers will follow. It's a pretty big revolution in the defense industry, according to Gunbert Schierf, if I said that right, a former advisor in the German Defense Ministry and partner at McKinsey and Company, who helped fund a defense tech company called Helsing in 2021 with seed money from Spotify's chief Daniel Ek and others. It's totally different business model. Totally different in the way that the military industrial complex and their companies are not the only companies that would and are going to make big dollars in the future coming war. Russia is helping train China's paratroopers, leaked files show. I already said that because that was obvious. Russia is helping to train and equip Chinese airborne forces in its assault tactics and hybrid warfare, according to leaked documents that point to the deepening Sino-Russian military partnership. We know that China has had plans on this for a long time. What's been stopping them? I don't know. Like, I talked with Dubai on Thursday. He doesn't seem to think that China will ever do that, but I think they will. And they're getting the go-ahead from their allies. Russia is helping prepare the Chinese to attack Taiwan. Same basic article. Documents suggest Russia's using battlefield experience to give Chinese airborne units the training and technical know-how to carry out a lightning-fast operations. Trump asked Supreme Court to rule on birthright citizenship, saying that, you can't just come over here and drop anchor babies until we need those populations to help us fight a war. And that's why they changed the wording in the draft legislation, if they ever put that, out there, and draft your children. Well, now they can draft any person, male or female, citizen or not, 18 to, I think it was 26 years old. So anybody that's here may just be getting drafted instead of deported in the near future. And this is something to look into. Top Trump lawyer exposes Deputy Attorney General for sabotaging investigation of deep state kingpins. In other words, government protecting government, as always. Japan sends Air Force to NATO bases as threats emerge on multiple fronts. So they're picking sides. They're getting ready. Here's Russia. I brought this up last Thursday. Basically, each side is trying to figure out rules of engagement, when they're allowed to fire, what will be the pivotal trigger. Will it be some kind of dogfight or something like that that throws the world directly into war? With a friendly wave, Russian pilots dared NATO's to start a war. In other words, they're trying to test the waters on both sides to see if they can get the other side to strike first so that they could somehow be seen as, the good guys. The hell? I'm all blurry. There I am. Anyway, yeah. So when do they shoot? Who knows when that's going to happen? A massive telecom threat that was stopped. I brought this up Thursday too. Basically, this was a demonstration that groups can shut down anything. Cyber attacks disrupting all the European airports. Here in the US, everything's falling apart too. Actually, let's skip the wrong one. Netanyahu tells UN that the war will continue amid the backlash, because they don't care. And then they got this new weird, thing going on where they're talking about they're going to have a international committee running the government of Gaza, maybe even led by this guy that says that he flips around in the morning. Here, let me expand that out so you can see it right here. Tony Blair, the guy that said that he gets up and flops around in the sun in the morning light. He's a Luciferian. That's exactly who we need to lead Gaza. What a great pick. Says Blair's back. Tony Blair offers to lead Gaza after war ends, with Israel rebuilding plan cooked up with Donald Trump. This shit is never going to go down that way. And really think about this guy. Might as well go over there. I mean, you guys let your country basically become Islam, so I guess you guys are tied into the Middle East more than people want to admit. Trump expands unauthorized use of lethal military force in the Caribbean, which is completely silly. He's the commander-in-chief. If he authorized it, then it is authorized. What a silly headline by the National Review. However, if they're not declaring war on a nation, then they don't really need congressional approval. And everybody, all of the presidents, you can go way back, have done military actions without, Congress declaring war on a country. And this is talking about earlier this week on President Trump, undeclared war. It's pretty declared. He said that he listed several groups as being terrorists on the terror list. They're considered terrorists. So it is declared, and he authorized it. So this is silly. But anyway, wondering aloud where Congress is. Venezuela has not attacked our country militarily, but the president claims unilateral authority to employ lethal force, deeming boats, he says, are ferrying drugs into the United States. And I'm sure that all of you guys have seen the hits where they blew up these things. It's out in international waters. And I guarantee if they just seized one of those boats and it had tons of cocaine or fentanyl or something, it's not like Venezuela was going to go, hey, that's our boat. You can't attack our boat. You can't arrest our people. They're not going to do that. So there is an authorized by the president war on terrorists, which was authorized way back in 2001, if you want to get technical, the war on terror. And you could go back to the Bushes and Reagan, the war on drugs. All of this fits into that if that's the reasoning they're using. They're using to blow up stuff. Germany prepares to treat 1,000 injured soldiers per day in a war with Russia because they want one. It's like the whole world went bored. Not really. It's just the leaders, the people that aren't going to be in the wars, the people whose kids aren't going to be in war unless, they do like the prince did there from the UK, where he basically was never in any real danger, and they wouldn't let him be in real danger, but they let him go shoot at some people and do a little combat, not quite like, back in medieval times where sometimes you would actually get a royal go out there and fight another royal. They don't do that. Your kids, not their kids. And it looks like, they're just ready for it. And you would think Germany, of all countries, would be doing everything that they could, considering the last two world wars, to not be involved or not have their country smashed like in the past. Trump's nuclear renaissance rests on risky plan of radioactive waste. It says the Trump administration's plan to fast track construction of new commercial nuclear reactors to, address the power crunch around the country's leans heavily on a small group of startups, more business, retransforming of who, is getting paid to do things. That effort is already underway with a company called Oklo announcing this month that they will spend $1.7 billion to build an advanced fuel center made up of shiny futuristic buildings on a Tennessee plot where uranium was enriched for the Manhattan Project more than 80 years ago. Good, maybe they should use all that stuff. Who knows? And this is something I've been telling you guys for a long time right here. What's going to happen? The increase of drones to do everyday policing. Now, precedent was set a long time ago when they sent the Air Force loaned a Predator drone to local law enforcement to fly over and do reconnaissance on this ranch that they were having a standoff on, if you know what I'm talking about. But now we got MQ-9 Predator drones flying over anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles. And I don't necessarily have a problem with this, but I think that these cities or federal law enforcement, not the military, should be using their own drones if they want to do this, instead of setting up, which I think has nothing to do really with ejecting people, but setting up an inside military apparatus to deal with war in the Western Hemisphere. And like I said, we really don't know what was behind the scenes. All we got to see is the speech on the end of the woke, the Department of Woke, and the birth of the Department of War. And what would a Department of War do other than go to war? Hegseth orders rare urgent meeting of hundreds of generals and admirals. Now, I would think that there was probably some private meetings in the background with generals, maybe of different sizes, maybe 100 here, 300 there, talking about war plans and what they're going to do. And what better cover than something that's completely true, that's not fake. So they did have that. You just watched it. We watched this whole speech. So that meeting was about that, and I think they're serious about that. However, they probably had more meetings on other topics, obviously, and that was a good cover for them to all meet up in case of planning for future war. U.S. Navy puts on a light show with 7,500-mile thermonuclear weapons test. Multiple Trident II D5 ballistic missiles were fired off the coast of Florida and into the Atlantic. The U.S. Navy has launched multiple Trident II D5 ballistic missiles off the coast of Florida and into the Atlantic into the latest test of a system that can deliver thermonuclear warheads thousands of miles away. So really nothing new. We've been able to send nukes, not just us, but China, Russia, everybody, with pretty good, accuracy and distance to get over any place in the world with MIRVs, which are those warheads that separate into, like 10 or maybe 15 warheads, which is unstoppable. So they could hit the entire East Coast really with one of China's, big ballistic missiles, or Russia's. Either one of them could cause devastation with just one missile. So you can imagine what would happen if they sent up 10, 20, 30, 50. And if you check out Joel Skousen's strategic relocation, I don't have it right offhand, but there was a map in there that showed the whole U.S., and there was two scenarios on it, a 500 warhead scenario and a 2,000 warhead scenario. But either scenario, it's lights out, and everything that you would think is modern civilization would be over. It would be over. Not for the continuity of government. They're going to be in their bunkers. There'll be a period of time, and then it'll be safe to come out. And, people think that the world's going to end. And I brought this up many times. There's been 2,000 plus, like 2,100 something nuclear warhead tests already detonated on the earth, and we're still here. Those were in the ground. Those were above ground. They were in the ocean. They were in the air. Now, they weren't in populated areas, except for 2 of them. But all of the other ones went off, and we didn't have, massive fallout or any of these things. There was some fallout, and there's some places that are radioactive, but the world didn't end. It kept rolling. Matter of fact, most people didn't even know it was happening in the background. So they could pop off 10, 15, 20 nukes, get rid of several cities, and that would be end of civilization as we know it, but not the end of civilization. As a matter of fact, in 10 to 50 years, things would be rolling along like if they never even had that war. So right here, F-35s and Reaper drones join huge naval fleet patrolling the Caribbean. Now, I wouldn't really be worried about much until you see large fleets roaming the Pacific on our west coast. And then you'll know that they're ready for conflict. Or even around the Panama Canal, which is, I think, what this Caribbean stuff is more about, is getting rid of unfriendly countries near the Panama Canal and straightening out a Western New World Order alliance, because I think they're going to put the war over here in our backyard. Russia helping Chinese military. We kind of covered that. Preparing for Taiwan invasion. And then what's this one? All right. I think that's all. I mean, I could go on and on about the military preparing strikes inside Venezuela. Drugs, they say. But once you start doing this, it creates blowback. Little Juan that had nothing to do with the cartel or the drug traffickers or the human traffickers or whatever they're targeting. Little Juan had nothing to do with it. Little Juan had 16 cousins. 16 cousins that are mad that Little Juan was collateral damage, which creates blowback, which creates more attacks on not really the military, but probably civilian targets. And if we continue this, and it spreads into Mexico, which I think it will eventually, sometime now between, I'm going to say 5 years, maybe 10. They like to stretch these things out so that, people don't get too worked up about them and they get used to it through incrementalism. But eventually they're going to be targeting things in Mexico. And when that happens, little Juan from Mexico, little Enrique, is going to have a big family and they're going to be upset. And they're not going to accept, oops, we're sorry, collateral damage. They're going to be upset, and they're going to be up here on our border sending drones across to civilian targets. And that may be why we just set up this military zone from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, in preparation for this. Matter of fact, the last time I went to El Paso, I saw them out there exercising with their artillery, tanks, water trucks, etc. They had them all lined up in a defensive perimeter exercise, which could easily move down to the border and be there instead of, 80 miles inland from the border. But they're definitely working on these scenarios.
very dirty.
So look forward to that. Everybody not talking about the comet anymore because they figured out it was just a strange comet, or will it get weird again? I don't know. But let's look at some weird, funny news before I get off here. Where was it? Let me find it here. If I can find it. I lost the article. So I had them all mixed up. Now I wanted to bring this up Thursday, but we never got to it. Right here, let me put this out at a better thing so you guys can read it here. A delivery robot collided with a disabled man on LA streets. The aftermath is getting ugly. Now, this is just a microcosm of what's to come. Wait till drones are hitting planes, or AI planes are crashing into things, or even policing robots. You know, they put those policing R2D2 looking things out there not too long ago in San Francisco and LA, and people wiped shit on them and kicked them around and stuff. And, you know, people joke in New York about kicking the little robots around, but eventually it's going to be too costly to mess around with the drones that are delivering foods and other things, because they're going to make new laws to lock up people for impeding our infrastructure or delivery systems by messing with these. And then when they get that going, then they'll put out the robot police, the real ones that are armed, that have tasers, not unlike the Chinese ball that rolls around and stuns people and shoots out a net to capture them. I think what we'll do here is have robots with stun guns, pepper spray and stuff, and they'll just send the robots out to deal with, you know, like what the National Guard is dealing with now in Portland and other places where they're trying to get rid of stagnant cancer of crime. Now, I don't really agree on using troops for that purpose, but it would be essentially the same thing if you got a big federal task force or state policing agencies to do it. They're going to go out there in military gear and handle it. So it's kind of like, you know, beating a dead horse with the whole posse comitatus thing. That is a ship that sailed long ago when the federal government increased its policing powers and created all these things like the Department of Homeland Security. And matter of fact, if you add up all the police that's in the United States, they're like the fourth military in the world, fourth biggest military in the world. And they do have lots of ammunition and military grade equipment, and they have for some time. So to act like, oh, look, the troops are on the streets. They've been on the streets. They just have different uniforms. That's all. But they've been on the streets, and there's no arguing that there's a cancer of crime and Marxism that not too long ago, just a couple of years ago, burned about, what was it, $20 billion worth of, you know, infrastructure, buildings, businesses, killed people. And we just let that run rampant. And now they're finally cracking down on it. And you hear people whining about this, that, and the other thing. We let it get to a point where there doesn't seem to be another answer. But soon there's going to be robots out there. And guess what? The robots aren't going to have any empathy or compassion for your argument or your free speech or none of that stuff. So get ready for that. It sounds great, doesn't it? Here's some more crazy articles over here I wanted to cover for your Wednesday morning. Woman 95 beats fellow nursing home resident to death with a wheelchair. And I'm not sure if this is the same one, or I just saw multiple articles close to the same thing. But this one sounds a lot like the other one where they beat a Holocaust survivor to death. It says an 89-year-old woman living at a senior housing facility in Brooklyn was bludgeoned to death with a wheelchair, part of a fellow resident. Was beat to death with a wheelchair part. Oh, that's where that messed me up there. Anyway, beat him to death with a part off their wheelchair by a fellow resident who had dementia, sources knowledge of the probe say. And I don't know if this is the same one, if this lady was a Holocaust survivor, or it's a different nursing home attack by dementia people. I'm not sure. This one's trippy. Why many young adults turn on TV or movie subtitles, according to new poll. Well, I'll tell you why. Because their brain has been rewired. So they can't handle sitting down and watching a movie. They have to have multiple inputs. And when you have multiple inputs, you can't pay attention. So you need subtitles to look over and read what's going on because you can't hear it. Taylor Heen, 35, is often multitasking when she watches TV shows or movies at home. I'll be playing on the phone, loving on my animals, maybe cleaning up, picking up, she says, so she watches with the subtitles on. That way, I can kind of switch back and forth. In other words, she's not getting 100% of anything, which is like ADD to the max. And of course, you'd need subtitles to even get a little bit of it. Now, speaking of robots, according to the Daily Mail and many, many other articles that I've shown you in the past, welcome to the future. Sex and why every parent in America should be absolutely terrified. Sex bots, brothels, AIs that target your kid. It's all happening. So first came the multicolored people that wanted to, preach to your kids and read them books and groom them and make them like them because they don't reproduce. So they have to recruit to, build up their regiment of forces, so to speak. But yeah, this is becoming out of control in the world. This is Kokisha, one of the 15 sex dolls available at customers to the first immersive. You're going to immerse yourself in that robot. Fucking a toaster. Cyber brothel in Europe. And with all of this generation unable to, talk to, look people in the eye, mean what they say what they mean for the goldfish, this is going to be the direction that they take. And they're already doing it with AI. And, I brought that up Thursday. Let's see if I still have that article open. I believe I do. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. Psychiatric facilities are being bombarded by AI users that are losing their minds over, the emergence of an entirely new frontier of mental illness or mental health crises. And that's because they're losing their mind dealing with these AI. And AI are giving them, weird things that's going on. Like stuff I can't say. They're talking kids and older stuff into doing that stuff. Here's one. That guy. Here, let me make this bigger for you guys. You can see it here. That guy that was out there in the audience at the Kirk assassination that said he did it and seemed to have put in a distraction. That guy got busted not long after that of keeping graphic sexual photos of children on his phone. That makes sense, don't it? And look at this. I got naked so the police officer would understand my situation. Afghan demands to be sent home or he'll get naked every time. Because they're letting crazy people in everywhere. And here, while I light something, I just want you guys to watch this video. This ram here sees itself in the mirror. This is some tobacco shop in Russia. They wake up in the morning and go to work. They ain't got no windows. No windows. Can you imagine dealing with that shit? Anyway, I have to take a small break, but you won't notice it because I'm going to pause it and I'll be right back. And it'll be like I time travel. All right, I paused for the cause, man. But I forgot where I was at, but I think I was going in a direction here with the future is now here. Not only should you get used to the idea that we will be going to war, a worldwide conflict. It might not be, like World War II, but it will be a worldwide war. And let's see here. Some of these articles like this, the F-35 Reaper drones joining the U.S. naval fleet in the Caribbean, and why should you care? Because the entire system of humans is being taken over literally by robotics and AI. And some people joke and laugh it off and think that it's not happening, but it is happening in real time. So not only are your children being subjected to it and being trained to be in a world where they can't even, talk to other people in a normal way. They can't look people in the eye or, function. And then you got these brothels and the AIs pushing the idea of, the friend economy where they're going to sell you this AI friend all the way down to, humping toasters, which I've kind of been joking about for a long time. But it's not just that. They're going to be flying the skies above your head. They're going to be policing, like I've been telling for a long time. Matter of fact, here's one right here that I was talking about that, a minute ago, that they shouldn't be using government drones, like as far as military drones, unless they purchase those drones themselves and then use them. But they have their own drones. Police drones tracks Walmart theft suspect in real time. And it's just on and on. But how come we're still kind of, regressed as far as space travel? If it wasn't for Elon Musk, there really wouldn't be anything going on up there. But supposedly, meet the astronauts who will fly to the moon for the first time in 53 years. The Artemis 2 crew includes NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, who wants to honor his late wife's wish for him to keep reaching higher and higher. And boy, I am higher and higher right now, so I'm helping with that dream on my own. Anyway, supposedly these guys are going to go to the moon. I don't care about his wife. When are you guys going to the moon? 5 years after the death, age 46, Wiseman is fulfilling his wife's wish for him to keep reaching higher by leading the humanity's return to the moon as commander of the NASA-led Artemis 2 mission. Wiseman said, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. When are we going to the moon? The Artemis campaign is aimed to building a long-term human presence on the moon. And if you remember the show, if you watched it on Civilization Cycle, when we had Greg Allison on, he was talking about how the Chinese may, build a kinetic weapon on the moon, basically like something like rods of God or dropping tungsten or shooting it off the moon, which is theorized that we probably have, and also our enemies have some kind of satellites that might be able to do that already. But a stationed permanent base on the moon would be kind of hard to deal with. So it looks like the Americans are also on the same trip, and they want to build a permanent, long-term human presence on the moon to serve as a stepping stone for the onward exploration of Mars. Artemis 2 will take a crew on the moon next year, allegedly, for the first time since NASA's alleged first lunar exploration program, Apollo, ended 53 years ago. So that'll be cool. Looking forward to the digital renderings of things that they look at. I'm just kidding. The sun is entering a new and unexpected active stage. I was trying to kind of get through this article the other night, but Devine thought I was talking about hail, Hail. And I don't think he even caught on that I was not talking about that, but instead was talking about the Hale cycle, Hale, which is something different right here. The Hale cycle right here. But anyway, when solar activity reached an all-time low in 2008, astronomers reasonably figured the sun was entering into a period of historical low activity. You couldn't tell that by the headlines in 2008 because they were busy trying to tell us that the world was burning up, and they've been trying to tell us that since. But new research published September 8th in the Astrophysical Journal Letters suggests that 2008 marked the beginning of a steady increase of solar activity. To be clear, this reversal extends beyond the well-known 11-year cycles the sun typically follows. Specifically, the researchers found that the slow uptick in many of the sun's key vitals, such as solar wind frequency and the strength of the magnetic field since 2008, all signs were pointing to the sun going into a prolonged phase of low activity. And we saw that. We saw low sunspots for years, several years. And let's see here. So it was a surprise to see the trend reverse. The sun is slowly waking up. Well, if you watch the Oppenheimer Ranch project, I don't think that was a surprise to you. The solar cycle, an approximate 11-year interval marked by the rise and fall of sunspot numbers, is well-documented phenomenon. The sun's magnetic field flips polarity every 11 years, returning it to its original state after completing 2 full solar cycles. This 22-year magnetic phase is also known as the Hale cycle, which we'll open up right here. Coronal holes during the solar maximum. An ultraviolet image of the sun showing a coronal hole, dark region. Anyway, sunspots were first seen by Galileo in the 18th century by Rudolf Wolff, concluded from his study of previous observations that there was a roughly 11-year cycle of activity. In 1919, the astronomer George Ellery Hale, Hale, found a new solar periodicity. The 22-year cycle, solar magnetic cycle, which is comprised of 2 11-year cycles, and today is referred to as the Hale cycle. The 11-year cycle, a complex dynamo processes in which the sun twisted magnetic fields flip into opposite direction as a result of the combination of the sun's differential rotation and the convection in its atmosphere. Then after a second cycle, the original polarity is recovered. The cycle is characterized by periodic changes in solar activity, such as the number of sunspots and active regions, assembling of loop magnetic structures, which are the things that blow off, and fuck up stuff. During the period of maximum activity, the number of sunspots reaches a maximum. The number of coronal holes provides another measure of activity, a coronal hole being a darker appearing region of colder gas on the surface of the sun. During maximum activity, coronal holes are found at low latitudes of the sun, with fewer of them at the polar regions. Energetic events on the sun, like eruptions, flares, and coronal mass ejections, peak at or near times of solar maximum. So, looks like we're headed into fun. And back to the robots. They're going to be everywhere. They're going to be driving you to the airport. Then you're going to get on another one. You're going to fly in the airport. But there's going to be increasing problems with this stuff. Companies fighting each other for political reasons, like this Microsoft disabled some cloud services used by Israel's defense ministry. And because I had like an ADHD person, this was not supposed to be in this group of headlines right here, but anyway, we'll cover it anyway since we're seeing it. 6 children, including an infant, locked up in Milwaukee storage unit, police. So some parents decided it was a good idea to live somewhere else and keep their kids locked in a storage building. And I see more and more and more and more and more of this stuff. And actually, me and Anna, we're going to start the R&R show back up. We're just trying to get a schedule because she does have a job. My son has a job. So we're trying to juggle hours between having, 2 toddlers here to have time to do a show. So it's kind of hard to do that, but we're trying to get a good schedule where I'm on probably 2 or 3 times a week, plus a R&R show, and then plus Civilization Cycle. But me and Anna would be covering crime like this. 6 children, including this infant, locked up by crazy people. And I just see more and more crazy of this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. We'll get to that at another time. But let's have fun for a minute and look at these conjoined twins that exploit their sexuality. Exploit or explore? I said it wrong, but whatever. 2 women have hit back at noisy critics saying people shouldn't need to know about their body parts to see them as human. Well, of course not. But the problem is people are human and they do see them as human. So, of course, they think about things like what goes where, how does it work, what do they do? I'd take them on a date if I wasn't already with somebody. They look like 2 lovely young ladies. I'd take them on a date, and I would probably, if I was a young man, find out what went where. Just saying. Is that mean? Is that bad? I'm sorry. This guy looks like he has a smug, happy face. So he's living the dream. Don't worry about them. Anyway, back to the robots. Scientists warn governments must bomb AI labs to prevent the end of the world. And they might be right. With stuff like this, there are more robots working in China than the rest of the world combined. So let's see what these guys, I guess, kind of weird looking guys, they got that weird look to them. Nice shirts. Anyway, two scientists have warned that the growing industry could lead to a true end of the human race. Artificial intelligence is popping up seemingly everywhere we look in the moment, used to boost our Google searches results, create mad, embarrassing promotional videos, therapy for people with mental health issues, which is probably a really bad idea, and make such realistic images people can't trust your eyes anymore. And that's right, you were told a long time ago never to trust your lying eyes. Well, now is the time not to trust your lying eyes, like for real. And I've been telling you that for years now, that you can no longer trust what you see, read, hear, even if you're there in real life. However, it's not everybody is thrilled about the prospect of the rise of AI, including Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nate Soros, spelled different than the other Soros guy, two scientists who fear it could bring about the destruction of humanity. From fearing of a rejecting AI altogether to scientists run the Machine Intelligence Research Institute in Berkeley, California, and have been studying AI for a quarter of a century. AI is designed to exceed humans in almost any task. And by the way, according to Musk, it will only be 1 to 2 years before AI is equal in cognition to humans. And I think that's already happened. They're kind of slow rolling the idea because people just don't want to wrap their head around it, or they don't want them to wrap their head around it yet. And the technology is becoming further advanced than anything we've ever seen before. Yudkowsky and Soros, I don't know how to say it, predict these machines will continue to outpace humans at an incredible rate during calculations in 16 hours, which would take humans 14,000 years to figure out. Some people don't believe that, but I do, because we're seeing the proof in the pudding. The AI is all around us. It's doing stuff that's unimaginable. They warn us that humans still don't know exactly how synthetic intelligence actually works, meaning the more intelligent that AI becomes, the harder it will be to control. Spelled out in their book, "One builds it, everyone dies." They fear AI machines and programmed to be ceaselessly successful at all costs, meaning they could develop their own desires, understandings, and goals. The scientists warn that AI could hack cryptocurrencies and steal money, pay people to build factories to make robots, and develop viruses that could wipe out life on Earth. They have put the chance of this happening between 95 and 99%. And I don't think it's that high. However, the technologies that they're worried about, I've demonstrated on this show, are real, and they are building robots, and soon robots will be building other robots. AI will be writing other AI, and there will be, if it already happened, a singularity where they outpaced human thinking. And then we have to wonder if the people in charge are listening to the AI or still programming it, and with all the faults that they already programmed in it. And then this guy, regulating AI hastens the Antichrist, says Palantir's Peter Thiel. Tech billionaire claims that a lecture about religion, that the devil promises peace and safety by strangling technology progress with regulation. This guy's nuts. Anyway, one of the world's most powerful technology leaders has reportedly warned that regulating artificial intelligence risks hastening the coming of the Antichrist. Yeah, you heard me. That sounds crazy. Peter Thiel, conservative. I don't think he's really a conservative, but whatever. Billionaire who was co-founded Palantir, the data analytics group, and PayPal, the payments operator, is said to have made the comments during a lecture delivered in San Francisco this week. Thiel, a former donor at the Donald Trump and mentor to JT Vance, the vice president, said that fearing or regulating promises, technology, and scientific progress, including in AI, risk courting the devil, according to the Wall Street Journal, which cited people who attend the event. Palantir said last week that he would invest 1.5 billion in the UK, creating up to 350 jobs. Wow. 1.5 billion for only 350 jobs. Part of a package announced from the US technology companies with coincided with Trump's state visit. Coincided, I'm sorry. Anyway, it's funny because right here where I live, I just saw a video. Maybe I can find it again. I don't need to, but they were talking about building these giant data centers right here in the next county over for $1.2 billion. And another one somewhere else locally that they were going to, what they said is take a big portion of the 500 billion meant for their Stargate program. And at the same time, there's a $1.2 billion holding facility not too far away, and billions of dollars spent on military defense zone along the border. And they're building these AI centers and data centers right along in that same area. So if you can think about it, New Mexico's last in education, it's last in wages, it's the highest in crime, it's supposedly the deadliest or most dangerous state right now until somebody else takes the title for a little while. So we're first at all the worst things, and we're last in all the good things. And now they're investing hundreds of billions of dollars. And at least a big portion of those hundreds of billions of dollars is going to be spent right here. But just like this guy's talking about, $1.5 billion for only 350 human jobs. That's a lot of money, but not too many people employed. So maybe there's two sides of that. So you got some people that just want to blow it out of the water, and some people saying, you know what, if you stop it, the Antichrist will come. What if it is Antichrist or the idea of Christ? Obviously, the whole divine idea of Jesus Christ, or an enlightened person in the flesh, a human in the flesh. Either way you want to look at it, divine or just a really enlightened human. Either way, AI and a technocracy is exactly opposite of that. So if you believe in the Christ, Jesus Christ, you would know that this AI technocratic transhuman system is anti that. Even if you don't believe that Jesus was divine and the Son of God, maybe you just believe that he's a historical figure that was an enlightened human being, it would still be anti-Christ. So Thiel might be a little crazy. You might want to listen to those nerds over there in the Silicon Valley, the ones saying we should just blow it all up. Stop it. Let's get rid of it. Or they might be a little crazy too. There has to be a balance in which we can progress technologically without becoming slaves to our invention. And right now, the government is basically fighting over whether or not you're going to pay for all of these programs that don't help the American citizen. And here's this last article before I get off. Time runs out for Congress to pass funding bill that Trump leaks humiliating photo of Democrats taken during failed negotiations. And that's funny. I think it's funny. What's this one? Terrifying noises heard by roommate of Kentucky cheerleader before her. This looks like something for the R&R show. Anyway, you know what? Who cares if they shut the government down? They could just run it by AI, like they've been talking about, replacing a lot of human positions with AI, including, but not limited to, the government. And that's kind of where we stand. At the precipice of war, at the precipice, the turning point of the transhuman system. We're in it. Let's hope we're in to win it. And anyway, This show has been brought to you by listeners like you, like PBS, but I don't get funded by the government. So, you know, if you think about helping the show, and by the way, let's see here. I wanted to give thanks to some people here. Just got to look up the name right here. So, Julie Heading, thank you for buying me a coffee. I really appreciate that. And over on the PayPal, some people gave me some stuff. Matter of fact, if you guys know Bill, that comes in the chat all the time, Bill Sibley is like the only person that's donated to my channel for years. So he basically, you know, kind of keeping it open. Thanks, Bill Sibley. And let's see here. I think I got more. There was someone else, but it's not on my list anymore. But thank you guys for donating. It really helps out. Every little penny that I can get helps me, you know, exist here. And where was I? There, couldn't find it. Anyway, thank you for those donations. And if you'd like to help out, I am completely listener supported. So you can PayPal a mofo right there, or you could buy me a coffee right there. YOLO mofos. And I appreciate anything that you give, but don't feel obligated. This is a show that I do for free. I don't expect to get paid. I do it because I want to. It does cost money, but you know, I make money sometimes working like everybody else. Just sometimes I don't, which sucks. We have slow times. But anyway, and plus I'm getting, believe it or not, with my beautiful face, I'm getting a little old where it's kind of hard to do hard labor nowadays, and I get really sore from it. So probably not going to be doing much of that for other people anymore, mainly for myself. Like gardening and fixing my own house and whatnot, teaching my children how to fix things, because obviously they're going to be going into a whole new wide world, a brave new world. Maybe we'll get one of those Tesla bots in 10 or 15 years when it's old to do some of the backbreaking work around here, if it can function and do it. Who knows? Anyway, that's all for me. Peace out, and thanks for watching Mountain High Time, where the time and the place are the same. It's 177.6 on your freedom of speech dial, and I'll try to be on here more. I've been really trying. It's just, like I said, it's hard to put a schedule together when you got so much interaction going on with other people's schedules. But the plan is to be on here quite a lot from now on. So peace out. And I'll probably be back on later tonight with some anthropology science to go through. And let's talk about ancient man. I think I'm going to call that one The Cro-Mag in Me. The Cro-Mag in You. However you put it.
Who are you? I'm no one.
That's very dirty.